My beloved child, listen closely. Pause for a second, because this is not something you should ignore so easily. When a message carries names like Archangel Michael and God together, and it directly points towards someone in your life, especially a name starting with M, it immediately feels personal, almost like it's meant only for you. And that is what makes this moment different from everything else you scroll past. Right now, think carefully. How many people do you know whose name starts with M? A friend? Someone close? Someone you trust? Or maybe someone you've recently started noticing differently? The moment you read that letter, your mind automatically connects it to someone, and that connection creates curiosity, but also a slight tension, a question that doesn't settle easily. What if this is about them? This is where the message pulls you in. It doesn't tell you everything. It doesn't give full details. It just gives you enough to make your mind complete the story. And when your mind starts completing the story, it feels real. The idea of someone warning you creates a sense that something is hidden, something you haven't noticed yet, something that might affect you if you ignore it, and when urgency is added, don't skip. Before it's too late, it removes your time to think, and replaces it with pressure to act, and that combination is what makes you stop scrolling. Now take a moment and think again. Is there someone with M in your life who recently changed? Someone who feels different? Someone you trust, but still question sometimes? Your mind will try to find an answer, because it doesn't like uncertainty, and that is exactly what makes this message powerful. It creates a question without giving a clear answer. But here's the deeper part. Not everything that feels personal is actually true. Not everything that creates urgency is real. And not everything that mentions a name is about someone in your life. Sometimes, messages like this are designed to make you think, to make you connect, and to make you feel like it's meant for you, even when it's not. So instead of reacting instantly, stay aware. Don't let curiosity turn into assumption. Don't let urgency turn into panic. Don't let one letter decide how you feel about someone. Because real truth in your life will always come from clear actions, real experiences, and direct understanding, not from vague warnings or incomplete messages. So pause, think, and stay in control. Because the real power in this moment is not the message itself. It's how you choose to respond to it. Then this is where everything becomes deeper, more intense, and much more personal, because now the message is no longer just words on a screen. It has entered your thoughts, and once something enters your thoughts, it starts shaping how you feel, how you look at people, and even how you interpret small things in your life. And that is exactly what makes a message like this powerful, because it doesn't give you a clear answer, it gives you a direction to think in. And once your mind starts moving in that direction, it begins to create its own story. Think about what just happened the moment you saw the letter M. Your mind didn't stay empty. It immediately searched for someone. Maybe it was a close friend. Maybe it was someone you recently met. Maybe it was someone you trust, or someone you are unsure about. And the moment that person came into your mind, the message became personal. That is the key. Because before that, it was just a general statement. But now, it feels like it's about your life. And once something feels personal, it becomes harder to ignore. Now your mind starts asking questions. Why this person? What could they be hiding? Have I missed something? Is there something I should be careful about? And these questions don't come with answers. They come with uncertainty. And uncertainty is what creates tension. Because your mind doesn't like not knowing, so it tries to fill the gaps. It starts connecting small details, small memories, small moments that may not have meant anything before, but now suddenly feel important. And this is where things begin to change, because you are no longer seeing things as they are, you are seeing them through the lens of doubt that was created by a single line. That is how powerful suggestion can be. It doesn't need to prove anything. It only needs to plant an idea. And once the idea is planted, your mind does the rest. Now think carefully about this. Before reading this message, did you have clear proof that something was wrong with that person? Or did the doubt begin only after you saw those words? This question matters more than anything else. Because if the doubt started after the message, then it is not coming from reality, it is coming from suggestion. And suggestion can feel real, especially when it connects with your emotions, but it is not the same as truth. Now look at how the message is structured. It uses powerful names like Archangel Michael to create authority. It mentions God to increase seriousness. It introduces a warning to create concern. It gives you a letter to make it personal. And then it adds urgency, don't skip, before it's too late. Every part has a purpose. Nothing is random. The authority makes you trust it. The letter makes you connect it to your life. The warning makes you feel cautious. The urgency makes you react quickly. And when all of these combine, your thinking becomes faster, more emotional, and less logical. That is the moment where most people lose control. They start assuming. They start doubting. They start reacting. But here is where you are doing something different. You are still here. You didn't act immediately. You didn't jump to conclusions. You are observing. And observation changes everything. Because when you observe something instead of reacting to it, you begin to see it clearly. You begin to notice the pattern. You begin to understand how it works. And once you understand how something works, it becomes easier to break its effect. Now ask yourself this honestly. If the message had not mentioned the letter, would it feel the same? Probably not. Because the letter is what makes it feel personal. But the truth is, the letter M is extremely common. There are countless people with that initial. Friends, family members, colleagues, strangers. So the message is not pointing to someone specific. It is letting your mind choose. And whatever your mind chooses becomes your focus. That is why it feels real. Because it came from your own thoughts. But just because a thought comes from your mind does not mean it is true. This is the most important thing to understand. Your mind can create possibilities. It can imagine situations. It can connect unrelated things. But truth is not based on imagination. Truth is based on evidence. On consistent behavior. On real experiences. On clear actions you have actually seen. So instead of letting one message decide how you feel about someone, bring your focus back to reality. Think about that person based on what you actually know. Not what you just read. What have you experienced with them? How have they treated you? What patterns have you seen over time? Because real understanding comes from consistency, not from sudden suggestions. If there is ever something wrong, it will show itself clearly, through repeated actions, through real signs, through things you can actually observe and confirm. It will not appear as a vague warning connected to a random letter. Now notice something else. The message also uses urgency, before it's too late. This is important. Because urgency removes thinking time. It makes you feel like you must decide immediately. And when you feel rushed, you are more likely to act emotionally instead of logically. But real truth does not disappear in seconds. Real situations do not vanish because you took a moment to think. If something is real, it will remain real whether you act now or later. So urgency without clarity is not a sign of truth. It is a sign of pressure. And pressure is what you are now learning to resist. At this stage, your thoughts may still try to go back to that person with M. That's normal. Because the idea has already been planted. But now you have the awareness to handle it differently. Instead of believing every thought, you can question it. Instead of reacting, you can observe. Instead of assuming, you can wait and look for real evidence. And when you do that, the intensity begins to fade. Because the thought no longer feels like a fact. It feels like a possibility. And possibilities are not the same as truth. Now bring your focus fully back to your present moment. Look around. Everything is normal. Nothing has suddenly changed. No real event is happening that matches the warning. That is your reality. And reality is always your strongest reference point. Because no matter what you read or hear, your surroundings will always show you what is actually happening. At this stage, you are not just calm, you are in control. Because you understand what happened. You understand how your mind reacted. And you understand how to bring it back to clarity. And that understanding is what protects you. Not just from this message, but from many similar situations in the future. Because now you know the pattern. You know how curiosity is created. You know how urgency is used. You know how emotions are triggered. And once you know these things, they lose their power over you. So now the choice becomes simple. You can let the thought continue. Or you can let it go. You can hold on to doubt. Or you can return to clarity. And that choice is yours. Because in the end, the real power in this moment is not the message. It is your response to it. And right now, you are choosing awareness. And that is what keeps you calm, stable, and in control. You are still here, then this is the point where your understanding becomes even more clear and settled, because now you are not just thinking about the message, you are starting to see how it actually worked on your mind. Because the moment you saw the letter M, your brain automatically tried to connect it with someone in your life, and that connection made the message feel real and personal, even though it was completely vague, and this is how suggestion works. It doesn't give you full information, it gives you just enough to let your mind fill the gaps, and once your mind fills those gaps, the situation starts feeling true, even when there is no real proof behind it. And this is why it is so important to pause and question where your thoughts are coming from, because if the doubt or curiosity started only after reading the message, then it is not coming from reality, it is coming from the message itself. And once you understand that, you begin to separate your real experiences from the thoughts created by suggestion, and that separation brings clarity, because now you are no longer reacting emotionally, you are thinking logically. And when you think logically, you realize that one random letter cannot define a person or a situation in your life, and no real warning would ever come in such an unclear and urgent way. And when you bring your focus back to what you actually know, your real interactions, your real experiences, and your real observations, you naturally feel more stable, because reality is always consistent, while suggestions are uncertain. And once you stay connected to that reality, the confusion fades, the doubt reduces, and your mind becomes calm again, because you are no longer chasing something unknown, you are simply staying grounded in what is true and verifiable. Then this is the stage where everything becomes completely steady and clear in your mind, because now you are no longer reacting to the message, you are fully understanding it, and that understanding removes its effect completely. Because you can clearly see that the mention of the letter M was not pointing to anything specific, it was simply a way to make your mind create its own connection, and once your mind created that connection, the message started to feel personal. But in reality, nothing in your life actually changed, nothing new happened, and no real situation appeared, and this is the most important realization, because it shows you that the power of the message was not in the words themselves, but in how your mind responded to them. Now you can also observe how your thoughts behaved. At first they tried to connect the message with someone, maybe even question or doubt, but as you continued to stay calm and think logically, those thoughts started to lose their intensity. Because they were not supported by anything real, and this is a very important point, because it teaches you that not every thought deserves your attention, especially when it is triggered by something vague or unclear, and once you understand this, you naturally stop reacting instantly and start observing your thoughts instead, which keeps your mind stable and in control. Bring your focus back again to your real experiences, the actual behavior of the people in your life, the patterns you have seen over time, and the trust you have built based on reality, because real understanding comes from consistent actions, not from sudden or mysterious messages, and when you rely on what you actually know instead of what is suggested, your thinking becomes clear again, and that clarity removes unnecessary doubt and confusion. The use of names like Archangel Michael in such messages may have made them feel more serious at first, but now you understand that true guidance never creates fear, pressure, or urgency. It does not force you to act immediately or make you question people without reason. Instead, it allows you to stay calm and understand things clearly, and that is exactly what you have done, and that is why you are no longer affected. At this stage, you are fully in control of your thoughts and your response, because you are not reacting to suggestion anymore, you are choosing to stay grounded in reality, and that awareness is what protects your peace. Because it keeps you from being influenced by unclear or emotional triggers, and once you have this understanding, you naturally remain calm, focused, and confident in any similar situation. In the end, this becomes a simple truth for you, that not everything that feels personal is real, not everything that creates doubt is true, and not everything that tries to rush your thinking deserves your attention. And once you carry this understanding forward, you stay stable, aware, and in control, no matter what kind of message appears in front of you.